the idea of making sure that the teams that are built are really dependent upon an engagement that has to be really positive. In other words, yes, you will have teams from time to time, and they will be established from different points. And the two different types of teams that you will come across in daily life, daily work life, that is one is a functional team. In other words, a group of engineers, a group of finance people, a group of technicians, and what is referred to as a project team. Now, a project team itself is a similar grouping dynamics, but each people in that will have a different role. So, and to have a different role, they come up from different backgrounds. So there could be a collection of engineering, planning, finance, management, and various other points. But the idea is that the two types of group differ from two specific situations. Now, the delegation effect is basically that we have a leader, and the leader is in both the groups, and the leader then has a group of allocated tasks. The allocated tasks then have to be shared amongst the team, whether they be a project team or whether it be a functional team, and how to actually ensure that the tasks are actually performed and in a both an effective and as well as an efficient manner, and also compliant to all the relevant tasks, comes down to a task of delegation. So delegation really is, as you may be aware of, the act of making your team workers or your team members to do tasks that are actually available to them or that may need to be put in. Now, the most effective delegation technique is one that allows the person taking on the task to actually own the task. In other words, become empowered with that task. Okay, so they can actually realize their full potential. Now, obviously, we're all technical based. What would you say is something that you do not like about delegation? May I ask you a question of that? So you can either answer via the chat or via microphone, whichever one you choose. Anyone would like a suggestion?
I'll jump in.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can.
Good.
Yeah, one of the obvious reasons is that often we think we can do it faster, better, more timely, more accurately ourselves.
It's a good answer. Okay. Now, what I have found, and I have been in a management position for a little while, is that it's the hardest thing is the realization that you can't do everything, and that's really the. I mean, you start off saying, yes, I can do all of this, but you come to realize that yes, you may, given enough time, but often the time constraints don't become amenable to that. So it's important to be able to share the load, and that's where I think, sorry, the question, thank you very much for Chris. Did that make, that was my point of view anyway, that I don't like delegating because I like to do everything myself, but unfortunately that's one of the failings on my part, which I have got over, by the way.
Yeah, you have to. I'm currently project managing a couple of jobs, lead engineering, up to about 20 other jobs and running a department of 27 people. I can't do everything.
Yeah, and it's hard, and maybe because as an engineer, as a technical person, you're trained to solve problems, and I see this as just another problem on my plate rather than empowering a team or whatever. So we all agree it's a real an issue, but I agree with Erin as well that some people think that they should be responsible for the task. Okay, so it's an important thing that often is an impetus to actually to drive people towards an outcome, but making sure that they understand how your standard of work and how basically they're overloaded. As I agree with Erin as well, that it's not a it's an important thing. And you're right, Brett, that the standard of work is something that you have to at least come up to your standard, and often your standard, and I'm speaking from a personal point of view, I often, because I'm experienced in a specific field, that I expect people to come up at, almost immediately up to my speed, and I've had, 20, 30 years of experience. So it's false expectations on my part, but as I can say that it really, you need to not accept the lower standard by any means, but put in regular feedbacks into the system, and that also comes down to the empowerment, that you tell people that what you expect, give them the idea that you're supporting them, and hence you actually do get a good outcome. So, and I have found that, sorry, often I need to question if my standard is too high. It's slightly higher, lower standard, and still accept them. Yeah, I agree. You can compromise, but what is the better good? Okay, so so thank you very much for your great contributions. Okay, so poor delegation is exactly what we've said. If you don't have delegation effectively running, you immediately have people being overloaded. That is the thing. Whether you're overloaded, whether your team is overloaded, you just can't do the allocated tasks that you're expecting to. So it reduces team morale. You're always working late. A lot of your team is confused. So the objective of delegation, and don't get me wrong, delegation is an ideal that needs to be worked on and followed through, but sometimes there is systemic issues within your company that not stop you delegating, but at least keep barriers towards it. And there is, you have to be aware of that. So anyway, what is the object of delegation? Is to enable someone to do the job for you. And I know that you're not being dictatorial. You're not actually abdicating your responsibility. It's the fact that you can't do the task in the time allocated. So to do that, you've got to make sure that they know what you want, that they have the authority to achieve it, and they know how to achieve it. So it comes down to three important things: communications, structure of your company, and skills. So in structure and support of your company. So if any of those are missing or inadequate, then unfortunately you're doomed for failure. And that is because there is a lot of frustration that can creep in. There's a lot of missed targets. So it's all based upon putting the infrastructure and the culture in place. And it's not just you, it's not just me, although we always take it as a personal thing. It's not that. And please, that's why I had the discussion a couple of minutes ago, because yes, we immediately brought it back to ourselves. But and I've had these conversations and I've run this course a few times and everyone says the same thing. But can I say that from a manager's point of view, that sometimes and often you're not at fault. You are just in a culture or in a thing that won't allow you to become successful. And so do you try to persist and blame yourself? No. You try and change the culture by ensuring that there are mathematical and systematic procedures and or cultures in place that will allow that effective delegation. Okay, so so what do you delegate? As much as possible, and not to reduce your workload, or that is the effect, but to ensure that the person you're giving it to can be used as a positive experience. And I'm being very specific about what I mean by that. You either give it to them to fulfill a gap in their workload, maybe they are lightly loaded, but also that you give it to them ensuring that they actually have a learning experience, or that they wish to take on the task because they want to own the task. And you have to look at it, the motivation upon their part. So obviously to the delegation has to be the task has to be in line with the group's goals, and you have to then do that. But one of the things that you shouldn't delegate, okay, is things that you are directly responsible. In other words, hiring of staff, payroll, financial, all those things which come down to your particular field and you are responsible for. Yes, you can give them, ultimately you are responsible for everything that comes out of your task if you are the leader. However, the idea is that the task have to be delegated to actually help the whole team. And it's always the idea that you can't do everything, yes, so the team has to pitch in. And I can say that a lot of the times, even though you're not running a project, but the project allocation methodology is a good thing to even a functional methodology or a functional team. Now, can I just ask a question? Do you understand what I mean by a functional team and a delegation and a project team? What are the differences there? Okay, now a functional team is a team that comes together as part of a department in running a organization. So it could be the sales team, it could be the marketing team, it could be the finance team, where you do have a head of the department and they have direct responsibility over the subordinates. And every day that group comes together and does a task. Okay, and it does a similar range of tasks. Now, in a project team, yes, so the question is, will a functional team contain a more common training and discipline? Definitely, yes. And it could be as mentioned, a finance team, a group of engineers who work on a project, on a task. It could be a group of, they have, as you said, similar training, similar goals. They work amongst themselves as a group to support other groups. Okay. Now, in the so that's a functional team. What is defined as a functional team? The other type of team, which is often established, is what is referred to as a project team. Now, a functional team has the running of the company, part of running the company over many years. Okay, it usually does the same thing year in, year out, and does various tasks. Okay. Now, a project has a defined objective. It has a defined time frame. So it is brought together at the start of the objective and then works through that objective and then produces an outcome. So that's what is referred to as a project team. Now, for that project team, you will have a lot of different roles that are required. There could be a finance role, there could be a scheduling role, there could be a purchasing role, there could be an engineering role, there could be a marketing role. But the project demands different roles for that to occur, whereas the running of a department can be one skill set. The project has a different skill set. So in that way, the project team starts off with a large objective. It then gets delegated by consent, by the way, to the people who are best suited to it. So in other words, you might have a finance member, you might have a engineering member, you might have a scheduler, you might have a purchasing officer, you might have a manufacturing representative. So in that way, they become a matrix structure. They come up for a certain period of time. They get together for a certain period of time. It may be not on a full-time basis, it may be on part-time. But the idea is that the delegation is initially all given, the task is all given to the head of the project team, and then they delegate it down to the different people. So and then the different people have different skill sets. So and undertake their task and report back and do the management and monitoring through that process. So is that okay, the difference between the two? And the reason why I brought it up is because the way that a project team delegates is upfront and expected to occur. Okay. And yes, they correct themselves on their loads and whatever, but that's the main thing. Okay, so is that clear on what my intent is there? Okay. Again, if you wish to comment, please you just get on the microphone or get on the chat. This is although you may not like to hear my voice all the time, I'd like to hear yours as well. So, okay. So the how do we actually delegate? Now, I gave you a classical model of delegation, and that is in the projects. So you identify, as a project does, a suitable person for the task. And it's important that you don't delegate to a group of people. You delegate to a person, because someone has to be responsible for that task being due. Yes, they can sub-delegate certain parts of what you're asking them to do, but the idea is that they are responsible for the task to report back to yourself. So prepare the person, explain to them clearly what you actually are asking them to do, and also what you expect, and ensure that you have the understanding that they have the understanding. Make sure that the person has the proper authority to do the job. Do they have enough resources? Do they have the right financial delegation? Do they have the right technical expertise? Make sure that they are trained properly. And as part of the technique, make sure that you formally formally plan a feedback path. And it's very, very important that when you're delegating and you're managing in particular, is that you get regular deliverables which are agreed to, but also you don't wait till right at the last part. In other words, you wish to review the process, the deliverables, and the outcome, and not just the outcome. Okay, and obviously you acknowledge a job when it's well done. Okay, so tasks that are not recommended that you delegate, including hiring, firing, pay issues, and policy. Okay, so now each one of those is fairly clear, but the idea is all of them have a direct legal consequence. Okay, so you need to do that. Okay, so after you've delegated and they've accepted the task, then you need to firstly make sure that they plan and you plan the feedback sessions, the progress sessions. Okay, how you actually take corrective actions when the monitoring shows you that some of the tasks have gone out of your specified limitation. Remember, a task or a delegation task should always have two aspects. Firstly, they should have a criteria for the outcome. In other words, you accept a certain outcome depending upon how well it has been done, how effective they are at doing it. But the next one is how you actually how they do the task. Do they do the task in a legal manner, in a compliant manner, in a manner that doesn't affect or detract from any of the other pieces of their team or their stakeholders. So it becomes that they are there. And the idea is that you also encourage their progress as well. Okay, so any comments or questions on that? Sorry, Chris, there's a couple. Oh, all right. Sorry, I'm trying to understand. So by across, I assume that you don't wish to make a comment. Okay, fine. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Hopefully that isn't because you disagree with what I'm saying, but okay, good. And please, I do encourage you again to put your comments even by your microphone. Now, can I ask, I know Chris has a microphone. Do the rest of you also have a microphone? Okay, all right. So understand, thank you very much. I won't ask about the microphone again, but you're quite happy. I'm quite happy for you to do it when you feel appropriate. But also, I'm glad that you are using the chat. So that's great. All right. So one of the key for successes in a delegation is obviously empowerment. So empowerment itself is a very hackneyed term. What I mean by that is a very misunderstood term, to the point where if you're using it as a catchphrase to people for blaming something on somebody, or you wish to actually use it as a development tool. So by empowering someone, I like to use the phrase allowing the person to take ownership. So basically the task is now given to them, and they, instead of just being following a dictatorial procedure, is that they are actually taking it upon themselves to make the task better. In other words, to make it within their scope of influence, to make it that they will be happy to say, I did this task. okay, rather than, oh, he made me do this task. So you can see that there is a difference there. So because I believe that that's the way empowerment should go, it does increase accountability, okay? Because what it tends to do is whoever the task is given to, no longer just says, oh, we've got to do this specific way because I was told to do it that specific way. No, they put their creativity into it. Okay, they made as they go through it say, oh, this is how we need to occur, but there may be a better way to do it. You may find different tool sets. You may find collaboration. So one of the classical things that I wish to go through, and it is the classical thing of everyone who has a who drives a motor vehicle has actually gone through it. So when you start, you want the idea is when you're learning how to drive a motor vehicle, you start off by wanting to go somewhere by yourself. Okay, but the step that you have to follow and must follow is that you have somebody in the car themselves teaching you and guiding you and instructing you, but also controlling you very, very tightly on how to do it. Okay, so in other words, you're being dictated to driving the car. When you get proficient enough, when you are trained or given enough authority, and that authority is when you actually pass a test, then you are then empowered to take the car and go wherever you wish to. Now, for instance, if you wanted to go from A to B, there may be 100 different ways to go to A and B, but no one is saying you must go down route 1, 2, 3, 4, but you take that upon yourself. So I know that's a very simplistic way, but if you take that and put that in that methodology and that tolerance, so even though you say, I want you to go from A to B, you don't tell them exactly the route they need to take, but you just make sure that they get there safely and that they get there in the proper time. So that's where the empowerment really has to come. Okay, so in that way, it helps people fulfill their own potential, and it develops their problem-solving capabilities. In other words, if they see for instance, a traffic jam, they don't sit there waiting for that traffic jam. They try and find alternate routes. Okay, and that's the best way. So, did that make sense? Okay, and for the people who have actually gone through this process, is that a useful thing? Okay. Right. Okay. So, why don't we actually like to do it? Is because it takes time. It also keeps the decision to yourself, and again, it dilutes or weakens your control, and that can be an issue for some people. So there is some reluctance there. I won't make any judgment on that, but it definitely is a thing, because you want to make sure that that the things are done well. You have the actual decision making to yourself. You wish to hold it, and you may be concerned that other people are making better judgment than yourself, or you don't trust the people to do the right to get things done. So there's I wouldn't say a trust thing, but definitely an apprehension there. Okay, so they're one of the things that will stop people delegating and empowering. So when the lessons of empowering are, if your subordinates are hampering around you while you do your work, you haven't delegated enough control. Okay, so that's one of the key indicators that people are watching you do your work instead of allowing them to actually do that. Okay, you may be able to do things better and faster, but again, you have to overcome their failings because you were once in that situation. Okay, so you didn't immediately get up to the proficiency level which you have at the moment, but you have to allow other people to do that. And I can tell you that that's one of the hardest things to do, specifically when you're under pressure yourself to deliver. And everyone is under those type of pressures in a commercial environment. Well, often you need to make sure that you are alert to any feedback and solicit feedback, both in terms of verbal as well as body language. And importantly, that empowerment doesn't mean abandonment. And that I can say, as I mentioned before, you take the analogy of the car. Yes, you help the person in the car, but you go through a specific mentoring process. You do exactly the same thing in the empowerment. Now, I see it as, and this is a good, hopefully, well, I think it's a good tool, is that when you put it as a shade of grey. So you start off with white and you get black. Now, white is that you have complete control of it, and black is where the person has complete control and over the task. So, and you basically have a shades of grey in that, and you have to go through the shades of grey. In other words, you have a little bit, they have a little bit. You're completely, you're handing it over to them. But and the abandonment is when they're available. Or when they wish to have the issues, that's when you can actually pull back and allow them to go forward. Okay. So how does delegation, how to make the delegation work? What is the best practice, basically? Avoid postponing major projects. They won't go away. They may lead to increased stress. Ensure that you have free time to enable the other people to come to you for advice. Sorry, do we get a copy of this presentation after the course? I'll have to talk to the, I'll have to confirm that with the course coordinator. If it is useful, I'll definitely try to organise it. But again, it's the thing. Yeah, okay, I'll ask a question which you're prompting me. Is it worthwhile for you so far? Okay, and Robin, you're quite correct that it is actually in the ebook which I've downloaded yesterday, which you would have downloaded. Okay, all right. So, good thing, except that others are doing things not your only way. Okay, remember, it's the idea that people have different values, different techniques to yourself, and that becomes an important thing. So share your ideas, your experience, and your wisdom. Yes, you are the best person at the task, and you may be the technical expert, but see it as a learning and a mentoring for other people as well. Okay, and there are two, and again, in summary, you delegate to free yourself up. In that way, you can actually empower the more effectiveness of the whole team. because you can do other things. Your teams are being more being evenly loaded, and also that you have the opportunity to have a training opportunity. Okay, so that there are some things. Okay, I'll if we'll come back to this if you don't mind, the idea is that you choose a task that you would like to delegate to another team member, and document how you would go about doing this task as a guideline. Okay, so do you want to do that task now, or would you like to do it at the end of the thing? Okay, okay, that at the end is okay as well. All right. Okay, so now, sure, we are running slightly behind time. Well, yep. So we can drop it. Okay, we can. Yep. That's by all means. Okay. So, as technical people, you are really proficient at doing the task that you've been allocated, and are really good at finding new ways to do the task. So often it becomes really on your issues. So, but when you put into a management position or a mentoring position, you have to make sure that you can get forward towards a system of effective control. The ebook, I would have to refer back to the ebook if you don't mind, Robin. I do know that it's in towards the beginning of the book, but I'm not too sure exactly which page it's on. So effective control, which means the control over your particular team, is that when you're delegating and controlling the outcome of the task, then you have to give clear instructions. And the goals that you set for the team, okay, good, that you set for the team, that you set for yourself, and also you set for the individuals, have to be used as the reference. So in other words, the instructions that you're given have to relate back to the tasks that will help the objectives of the team. Okay, and it's often referred to as a hierarchical structure or even a pyramid structure. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the idea is that you have a reference. Okay, so the clear instructions must follow into the reference. Then you go through a monitoring process, both understanding, sorry, that is spelled incorrectly, but my apologies for that. You try to get the parameters, the feedback, the values that were being generated, everything, something that will tell you the intermittent progress, okay? Intermediary progress, I should say. So something as you're going along. Just don't leave it right up to the end. Put some measures in place that will give you some indication of progress. And often that isn't the case, that isn't put in place. But I can tell you, as a management tool, and to have effective control, you really need visibility. And then you can make the value judgment and or analysis, but make sure you do have that visibility of what's going on. And it isn't just reporting back, say for instance in a meeting. It's getting some statistics in there, some measure of success, anything what it is, but the idea is that you're monitoring and keeping track of the monitoring. You then take feedback and also give feedback on only on the progress, okay? So it's important that you state what your basis of your feedback is, okay? Be objective about it. Then take corrective actions, and that would again be drawn out of the monitoring and the feedback, and do it again, okay? So it's important that you're doing this as a repetitive task, okay? So now about goals, make sure that you have a goal that your whole team will understand, and use the goals. There are several worksheets that are available in the e-books, but basically you're having the correct level of settings available, okay? And how far should you look ahead? Again, this comes back to making sure that you are visible about what is. So putting in the long-term goals, making sure that you have the how far the control and the goals align, okay? Then monitoring the type of goals that you have in the process, okay? Then if you see obstacles, how do you overcome the obstacles? How do you get closer to the point? So again, you're monitoring, you obtain the goals, you monitor against the goals, and then you do corrective actions accordingly, okay? And an exercise which we will skip over is making your dreams a reality. And the idea, and it is important that, yes, you have the higher level dreams, but you must also have the supporting tasks underneath it, okay? And obtaining a goal and thereby having control really comes down to understanding where you wish to go, monitoring where you wish to go, and then correcting on that. Okay.